Another thank you to all the people who rushed up here on Monday morning and helped with us mitigate the leaks that were occurring. We were only successful because there were people that dropped what they were doing at home and came and helped. And also thanks for all the people who were here today setting up for the picnic and kind of last minute changes of moving that from outside to inside. So one of those days were a little bit of chaos. Hopefully we controlled it well. So this summer, we have been looking at stories of the ancient nations of Israel and Judah as they were invaded and conquered and taken into exile, and then begin to hope and plan for the future. So today we come to the climactic story of our series for this summer as we turn to the book of Daniel. A book that was written actually a few centuries after the exile, when the people were in a different crisis and looked back to the stories of the past for encouragement and hope. And so they write these legendary, wonderful stories about this guy named Daniel and how he was able to survive with strength and nobility in the midst of exile. And so today we're going to read and talk about a really good story. So hear now this word from the Lord. King Belshazzar made a great festival for 1,000 of his lords, and he was drinking wine in the presence of the 1,000. So Belshazzar was never actually king, according to what we know from all of the historical records independent of the Bible. He was the son of Nabonidus, even though this story will say he is Nebuchadnezzar's son. Nabonidus was the emperor of Babylon, and one time Nabonidus left to go on a journey and left Belshazzar in charge of Babylon, the city, while he was away. And so maybe that's where the confusion comes, that he was ever actually king. But what's important in this opening verse is that we get the image just right. Here is Belshazzar throwing a great festival for 1,000 of his lords, and they're drinking wine, and we're supposed to have in our minds this image of excess and debauchery. That here are these imperial rulers enjoying their luxury that they have won on the backs of the exploitation of conquered peoples. So under the influence of the wine, Belshazzar commanded that they bring in the vessels of gold and silver that his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. So they brought in the vessels of gold and silver that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank the wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Uh-oh. So when empires conquer people, one thing they try to do is to destroy or co-opt the existing culture and religion. And the Babylonians were no different. When Nebuchadnezzar did destroy the temple in Jerusalem, he took the sacred vessels back to Babylon. Now remember, these sacred vessels were only supposed to be handled by the highest of priests, people trained and prepared, and who'd gone through rituals of purification before they ever touched them. And these vessels were only supposed to be used for the most sacred of actions in the worship of God. And here are these impure, corrupt, debauched Babylonians. They're touching these sacred vessels. They are using them to drink wine at their festival. And even more than that, they are using them to toast the idols. Uh-oh. And immediately, the fingers of a human hand appeared and began writing on the plaster of the wall of the royal palace next to the lampstand. The king was watching the hand as it wrote, and then the king's face turned pale, and his thoughts terrified him. His limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. The king cried aloud to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the diviners. And the king said to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever can read this writing and tell me its interpretation shall be clothed in purple and have a chain of gold around his neck and rank third in the kingdom." And then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king the interpretation. And then King Belshazzar became greatly terrified, and his face turned pale, and his lords were perplexed. This is a good story. This is like really evocative imagery, the paleness of the king, his knees knocking together. I mean, we can really picture what's going on in the city. This is great storytelling. What kind of words do we usually inscribe in a wall? We write the words that really matter to us, right? That really express something important and significant to us. When I was thinking ahead for this sermon and thought of the idea of writing on the wall, what jumped to mind to me was the Lincoln Memorial. I think one of the real sacred places in American life. And not just, it's built like a Greek temple, and there sits the statue of Abraham Lincoln, a martyr to our highest ideals. But part of what makes the Lincoln Memorial so effective is the words written on the walls. The Gettysburg Address on this side and the second inaugural address on that side. And every time I'm there, even though these are familiar speeches that I've read many times, I still have to read all of them. But each time I'm there, and government of, for, and by the people, and with malice toward none, and charity toward all, and these expressions of noble sentiments and high ideals, and every single time I cry. I just can't avoid letting those words inspire and speak to you and challenge you. Simon Schama, a Jewish historian, writes that this story about Belshazzar and the writing on the wall reminds us of something really important about the Jewish religion and culture, and that is that God is revealed in words. This hand of God has appeared before. It appeared in the story of the Exodus. The hand appeared and inscribed the Ten Commandments on the tablets for Moses. So God is revealed in the very act of writing, and in words, in stories and texts. And so the Jews become a people of the book for whom study and writing and reading are important, and something we inherit. Something invaluable in our tradition is the power of words to speak to us, to reveal things to us, the importance to us of study and writing and reading. So what do these words say? The queen, when she heard the discussion of the king and his lords, came into the banqueting hall. Curious why that queen wasn't there already. The queen said, "O king, live forever. Do not let your thoughts terrify you or your face grow pale. There is a man in your kingdom who is endowed with the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, he was found to have enlightenment, understanding, and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and diviners, because an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will give the interpretation." So Daniel, a Jew of the elite, taken by King Nebuchadnezzar when he first conquered Judah and took some of the best and brightest of the society and took them with him back to Babylon and made them part of the imperial court and trained them to serve him and to serve the needs of the Babylonian Empire. This Daniel becomes this great hero and figure of legend, this noble, inspiring, brave, courageous, resilient person who embodies all of the virtues this vessel of God used to speak. This one, this exile, this one who has been resilient in trauma, will be called to reveal the word. Then Daniel was brought in before the king, and the king said to Daniel, "So you are Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah. I have heard of you, that a spirit of the gods is in you, and that enlightenment, understanding, and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me to read this writing, and they tell me its interpretation, but they were not able to give the interpretation of the matter. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now if you are able to read the writing and tell me its interpretation, you shall be clothed in purple and have a chain of gold around your neck and rank third in the kingdom." Then Daniel answered in the presence of the king, "Let your gifts be for yourself, or give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and let him know the interpretation." Oh, so Daniel is not going to be defiled by the impure gifts of these debauched Babylonians. He's too good for that. But Daniel will interpret the words. He will speak the truth, and he will speak that truth to power. O King, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar kinship, greatness, glory, and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. He killed those he wanted to kill, kept alive those he wanted to keep alive, honored those he wanted to honor, and degraded those he wanted to degrade. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened so that he acted proudly, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and his glory was stripped from him. O King, any power that you have comes only from God. It isn't yours. You are not entitled to it. It is given to you in trust when you are God's instrument. If you do not fulfill that God's purpose, if you get haughty and proud, then God will take that glory from you. Just this week, I was reading an article about the legacy of Kofi Annan, the Ghanaian who was the Secretary General of the United Nations, and they said that one of the great achievements of Kofi Annan was getting written into international law and accepted across the world a new doctrine of national sovereignty. That nations' sovereignty is understood as a responsibility toward the people. And that if a nation abdicates its responsibility towards its people and begins to harm its people, then it loses its sovereignty. And that is now a part of our understanding of international law. And I, reading that, hear this ring of connection to this idea from Daniel. You, O King, only have your power because it is given to you, and with it come some duties and responsibilities, and when you fail at those, you will be judged. Nebuchadnezzar was driven from human society, and his mind was made like that of an animal. His dwelling was with the wild asses. He was fed grass like oxen, and his body was bathed with the dew of heaven, until he learned that the Most High God has sovereignty over the kingdoms of mortals and sets over it whomever he will. That's a reference to a story in the previous chapter of Daniel, when Nebuchadnezzar, at the height of his power, the richest and most powerful person in the world, went mad and ended up living out in the wild, naked, crawling around on all fours. This imagery of the richest, most powerful person in the world debased in the most awful of ways. And according to that story, he remained in that condition until he had been humbled before God and admitted his sin and confessed what he had done wrong, and God restored him. And so Daniel says, "And you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. You have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven. The vessels of his temple have been brought in before you, and you and your lords and your wives and your concubines have been drinking wine from them. You have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or know, but the God in whose power is your very breath, and to whom belong all of your ways, you have not honored." So from his presence the hand was sent, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed: Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez, and your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. And then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed in purple, and a chain of gold was put around his neck, and a proclamation was made concerning him that he ranked third in the kingdom. And that very night Belshazzar the Chaldean king was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. This is a great story. It muddles the history a little bit. But on the very night in which he defied the God who is sovereign over the universe, according to the story, the Medes and the Persians invade the city and kill the king and take over the empire. This is a story that the people write later, after they've returned home, after God has brought about God's justice, after God has vindicated them, after God has restored them, after they have been allowed to go home again, to reestablish their peoplehood and their culture and their worship and their nation. They tell this story about a God who stands with us, who judges our enemies, vindicates our righteousness, and brings us home again. And so when we live through the troubles and the trials and the traumas of our lives, may we be inspired by these good stories of the past. And may we live in the faith and the hope of a God who remains with us, encouraging us and supporting us, who will restore us and bring us home again.